What's up and welcome to the video. My name is Dr. Daniel Ricciardi, gut health expert, licensed pharmacist, and fitness enthusiast. I help clients resolve bloating, gas, and digestive problems so they can look and feel their best. This video is going to discuss some recent SIBO research updates. A few times per year, SIBO experts Shivan Sarna of SIBO SOS and Dr. Allison Siebecker get together and interview Dr. Mark Pimentel, who is perhaps the biggest SIBO researcher on the planet. I always enjoy listening to these interviews and seeing what the new cutting edge information regarding SIBO and SIBO treatment is. I watched the most recent video and these are my 5 biggest key takeaways from the discussion. Number 1 is that the exact individual strains of hydrogen producing bacteria that cause SIBO have been identified. Whether you have hydrogen SIBO, intestinal methanogen overgrowth, which is IMO, or hydrogen sulfide SIBO, there's always one thing in common, which is it starts with hydrogen gas always being produced by these hydrogen producing bacteria. Having hydrogen gas being produced makes sense for hydrogen dominant SIBO, but for the intestinal methanogen overgrowth and hydrogen sulfide SIBO, you should know that this hydrogen gas is the fuel to the fire, so to speak, to produce these other 2 gases. Last year, I made a video titled The 2 Bacteria That Cause SIBO. If you haven't watched it, you can go ahead and take a look. E. coli and Klebsiella were determined to be the 2 genera of bacteria that cause SIBO, the hydrogen gas produced during SIBO. Genera just means the plural of genus. I had to Google this and look it up. I didn't know what that meant either. But now the exact species and individual strains of these bacteria have actually been determined, which is pretty exciting. And they are, I'm going to read them off: Klebsiella pneumoniae, Klebsiella aerogenes, it's hard to pronounce some of these, E. coli BL21, E. coli K12, E. coli O157, E. coli 536, E. coli CTF 073, E. coli 8739, Escherichia species TW 09308, and then an unidentified E. coli species. You may be thinking, what do I do with this information? The answer for right now is probably nothing yet, but having this information and understanding the exact bacteria that are causing all of this chaos and symptoms will likely be very helpful in determining new SIBO treatments. Second takeaway, the level of hydrogen sulfide to diagnose hydrogen sulfide SIBO dropped from 3 parts per million down to 2 parts per million. Right now, as of July 2023, the only breath test that actually measures for hydrogen sulfide gas is the TrioSmart breath test. According to Dr. Pimentel's research, patients are still experiencing significant symptoms even when the hydrogen sulfide level is right at 2 parts per million instead of 3 parts per million. This means that if you scored between a 2 and 3 parts per million on the test in the past, you may have been told that you were negative for SIBO, when in fact you may actually should have been diagnosed with SIBO according to this new standard. Hydrogen sulfide SIBO is typically associated with loose stools, but this is not always the case for everybody. Some people also report having numbness or tingling in their hands and on their skin, or that they just sort of feel toxic, not from the sense of personality like they're a toxic person, but just in the way that their body and overall health feels. Takeaway number 3 is that Xifaxan does not seem to cause antibiotic resistance according to Dr. Pimentel. In general, if you use the same antibiotic over and over again, bacteria can become resistant to it. This basically means that the bacteria are smart enough to figure out how this antibiotic works against them, and then they can adjust or tweak certain things in order to protect themselves better. To sum it up, the antibiotic is not as effective against bacteria. However, up to this point, it has not been shown that bacterial resistance is developing from using rifaximin or Xifaxan multiple times. Takeaway number 4, and this is good news, per Dr. Pimentel, your microbiome may automatically restore itself after your SIBO is treated. If you have SIBO, the E. coli and Klebsiella species that I mentioned earlier in the video can make up more than 50% of your actual microbiome, which is huge. It's also way too big of a percentage. So when we reduce the numbers of these bacteria, the other bacteria have a fighting chance now to kind of reclaim their territory, which is a good thing to have a lot of different bacteria kind of repopulating in even amounts. We have hundreds of different bacteria species in our microbiome, and having 2 species make up over 50% of the microbiome is just not a good proportion. Hearing that the microbiome may be able to rebalance on its own is something different than I kind of expected to hear. I typically like to reintroduce probiotics probiotics after SIBO is eliminated, but it seems like this may not always be necessary to do. As a quick note, I'd still love to learn a lot more about this particular topic. There are definitely still benefits of using probiotics after SIBO treatment, such as speeding up gut healing, reducing inflammation, and regulating bowel movements when necessary. Fifth and final takeaway, small intestinal fungal overgrowth is now being researched more. So Dr. Pimentel is pretty confident that Sifo is not nearly as prevalent or common as SIBO, which is not a surprise. And the most common fungal species that are causing Sifo is also not a surprise, which is Candida. Hopefully though, a lot more information will be available in the future about this topic. We can't use antibiotics to treat fungi, they just treat bacteria, but we do know of some antifungal herbal treatments that have been shown to treat fungi. I made a video recently discussing which SIBO treatments can also be used for treating Sifo. If you haven't seen it already, you may be interested in checking it out. That is all for today. Like I said, I always look forward to these updates. Some of this research is brand new and hasn't even been published yet. So I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications, because next week we're going to be discussing a major blockbuster pharmaceutical drug and how it may actually be causing cases of SIBO in the future. And if you'd like, feel free to try to guess which drug it is down in the comments section below. Finally, if you enjoyed the video, check out one of these other two videos here next for more SIBO related content similar to this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.